Some trucks weren't stopped by terrain, weather, or distance. They were stopped by governments. Entire nations looked at these 18-wheelers, ran the numbers on weight, length, and raw power, and simply said, "Not on our roads." Not because these machines failed, but because they succeeded too well. Bridges couldn't hold them, roads crumbled under them, laws had to be rewritten around them. These are 10 semi-trucks so powerful they got banned, and the real stories behind why. Number 10. The Diamond T921. If you've never heard of Diamond T, that tells you everything about how underappreciated this company really is. Founded in 1905 by C.A. Tilt in Chicago, where the T in Diamond T literally stood for his own last name. The company built trucks with a philosophy that was almost radical for the era. A truck doesn't have to be ugly to be powerful. Tilt reportedly said that himself. By the early 1950s, Diamond T had landed on the Model 921 series, a heavy-duty, 6-wheel tandem-axle semi-tractor that became one of the flagship long-haul trucks of post-war America. The 921 was offered with engine options drawn from the industry's best suppliers. Cummins diesels rated at 200 horsepower were available, representing serious pulling muscle for the era. The truck was marketed as the premier choice for heavy hauling applications, and operators took that seriously, configuring 921 combinations that could gross well beyond what many roads and bridges in the era were rated to handle. The Diamond T921 wore that reputation proudly. At a time when most truck manufacturers were focused purely on function, Diamond T trucks featured flowing fender lines, aggressive chrome grilles, and rakish cab designs that made them look like something between a luxury car and a freight locomotive. They weren't cheap, and that was part of the point. But here's where the banning starts. Throughout the early 1950s, individual American states still set their own weight limits independently, and those limits varied wildly. Maine had set limits as low as 18,000 pounds on certain roads. Other states allowed substantially more. A 921 hauling a full load was a truck that could breach weight limits on specific routes in multiple states depending on configuration, legally operating in one jurisdiction, and technically overweight the moment it crossed a state line. Outside North America, the situation was more stark. Countries across Latin America and parts of Africa in the 1950s had national road weight limits that reflected the state of their infrastructure. Bridges built for lighter loads, road surfaces that hadn't been engineered for repeated heavy axle loads. A Diamond T921 with a loaded trailer, depending on configuration, could easily exceed what those roads and bridges were rated for. The truck was, in practical terms, restricted or prohibited on major portions of national road networks in multiple developing nations. Diamond T was eventually purchased by White Motor Company in 1958, and the brand survived until 1967 before being merged with REO to form Diamond Rio. By the end, approximately 250,000 Diamond T trucks had been built across the company's history. The 921 represents the peak of what that company could produce, and it was a machine that at full strength the infrastructure around it simply wasn't ready for. Number 9. The Autocar DC-75. The Autocar Company is one of the most important names in American trucking history, and one of the least celebrated outside enthusiast circles. Autocar was not just another truck manufacturer. It was, and remains today, the oldest surviving motor vehicle brand in the Western Hemisphere, founded in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1890. By 1953, Autocar was producing the DC-75, a heavy-duty conventional semi-tractor that represented everything the company stood for. The DC-75 was a custom-built machine. Autocar didn't do mass production in the conventional sense. Every truck was built to order, which meant that the specs on any given DC-75 could be dramatically different from the next one off the line. A preserved example of the 1953 DC-75, now on display at the Iowa 80 Trucking Museum, carries a 335 horsepower Cummins diesel and a 13-speed transmission, figures that represent significant upgrades from what it left the factory with, but which tell you something important about what operators believed these trucks could handle. The DC-75 was built around a high-riding front bumper, twin exhaust stacks, a large chrome-trimmed hood, and tandem axles at the rear for maximum hauling capacity. In 1957, the White Motor Corporation, which had been acquiring truck companies, took over Autocar. positioning it as the top-of-the-line brand in the white corporate family for heavy industrial applications. By the time Volvo Trucks purchased the total assets of White Motors in 1981, Autocar had established itself firmly in the severe-duty segment: mining, oil field, logging, heavy construction. And that severe-duty positioning is precisely why the DC-75 and its descendants ran into problems internationally. These trucks were built for payloads that reached up to 40 tons. Autocar explicitly marketed high gross vehicle weight platforms in the late 1950s. The DC-75 in fully loaded severe-duty configuration produced gross combination weights that were incompatible with the legal limits of many nations in Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and parts of the Middle East throughout the 1950s and 1960s. Roads and bridges in these regions were not engineered for repeated axle loads in the ranges these trucks routinely generated. For operators who tried to import or use DC-75 combinations in these markets, the result was the same in country after country: permits required, routes restricted, and in many cases full prohibition from using the vehicle on public roads without special government authorization that was almost impossible to obtain commercially. The Autocar DC-75 was a machine built for conditions that most of the world couldn't accommodate. It was proof that sometimes custom engineering and raw power create a truck that genuinely has no place on most of the planet's roads. Number 8. The International Harvester Emeryville DCO-405. This one has a fascinating origin story. After World War II, the International Harvester Company recognized that the west coast of America had completely different trucking needs from the rest of the country. Mountainous terrain, longer haul distances, and a trucker culture that demanded performance-first engineering led IH to open a dedicated manufacturing plant in Emeryville, California in 1945, right on the eastern shore of San Francisco Bay. The trucks built there became known simply as Emeryvilles, and the most powerful and significant of them was the DCO-405 cab-over engine tractor, introduced in 1957. This was a complete redesign of the previous generation. The new cab tilted forward for engine access, and it was mounted significantly higher than conventional designs to accommodate the largest diesel engines then available and the massive radiators they required. The engine options for the DCO-405 were remarkable for the late 1950s. The Cummins diesel range available went from the 165 horsepower HRB 600 turbocharged 6-cylinder at the entry end, all the way up to the 335 horsepower NRT06B turbocharged Cummins at the top of the range. But the most extraordinary specification came in 1959 when International built a special variant of the DCO-405 called the DCO-F405 toll road tractor, designed specifically for pulling double tandem axle trailers on restricted access toll roads. That truck was available with a 375 horsepower International DT817 turbocharged 6-cylinder engine, an engine originally developed for construction equipment, making it one of the most powerful road-going commercial vehicles in the world at that moment in time. The DCO-405 was enormously successful on the West Coast, where length regulations were more generous and the mountain passes of the Sierra Nevada and Rockies demanded maximum power. At the Emeryville plant's peak, International was the largest-selling heavy-duty truck brand in the world, and the DCO-405 was a central reason why. But beyond North America's West Coast, the DCO-405 faced serious obstacles. In Canada, length regulations in some provinces were stricter, and the Emeryville COE's dimensional specifications made certain configurations legally problematic. In European markets, which by the late 1950s were beginning to harmonize their approach to vehicle length and weight, the DCO-405's high cab placement, overall dimensions, and sheer power output, particularly in the DCO-F405 toll road tractor spec, put it well outside what was permissible on public roads. The Emeryville plant itself closed in 1963, with IH moving production to a much larger facility in San Leandro, California. The DCO-405 was eventually succeeded by the International CO-4000 in 1965, and then the Transstar COE series in 1968. But the Emeryville DCO-405 remains one of the most distinctive and historically important semi-trucks of the entire post-war era, a machine that the West Coast of America loved and that much of the rest of the world could only watch from the sidelines. Number 7. The International Transtar II COE. In 1974, International Harvester did something that had never been done before and arguably has never been done since in the same way. They built a commercial highway tractor specifically designed around the largest displacement diesel engines ever fitted to a road-going vehicle. This was the International Transtar II COE, officially the CO-4070B series, and it was a direct evolution of the Transstar COE that had replaced the Emeryville trucks in 1968. The Transstar II was recognizable by its distinctive top-mounted windshield wipers and a larger cab designed to accommodate the monsters under the hood. What kind of monsters? The Cummins KTA diesel, an inline six-cylinder engine with a displacement of 1,150 cubic inches, that's 18.8 liters, producing 450 horsepower. Just let that displacement figure sink in. Nearly 19 liters of diesel engine in a highway tractor. Also available was the Caterpillar 3408 diesel V8, displacing 1,099 cubic inches, 18 liters, and the Detroit Diesel 8 V92T turbocharged V8, rated at 400 horsepower. International also offered its own V800 turbocharged V8, displacing 798 cubic inches and producing 350 horsepower. These were, at the time, some of the largest displacement engines ever installed in a vehicle intended for regular road use. The Transstar II was built for one reason: maximum power for maximum loads over maximum distances. It was a long-haul operator's dream if your haul was in North America. Outside North America, the Transstar II was essentially banned by design. The Cummins KTA and Caterpillar 3408 engines that made the Transstar II legendary were simply not approved for use in road vehicles under most European regulations. European nations throughout the 1970s were enforcing strict vehicle dimension standards and increasingly tight noise and emissions requirements. A 1,150 cubic inch diesel engine hauling a fully loaded trailer generated noise levels and emissions outputs that weren't compatible with European standards of the era. Weight was also a critical factor. The Transstar II in maximum spec configuration, combined with a fully loaded trailer, could generate gross combination weights that exceeded the legal limits of virtually every country outside North America. In countries across Asia and Latin America, where national weight limits were strictly enforced on the backbone road networks, a fully loaded Transstar II simply couldn't operate legally on public roads without special permits, if those permits were even available. The Transstar II was replaced in 1981 by the International CO-9670, which used a smaller turbocharged Cummins N-Series 1.6 engine in place of the enormous KTA, partly for fuel economy, partly because the era of the 1,150 cubic inch road engine was drawing to a close. The Transstar II stands today as one of the most extreme highway tractors ever mass-produced, a truck so powerful that it outgrew almost every regulatory framework in the world outside its home market. Number 6. The Western Star 4964. Western Star is a name that serious trucking enthusiasts know well, but outside North America and Australia it's barely known at all. And that gap in recognition is directly connected to the fact that the regulations governing commercial vehicles in most of the world made it effectively impossible for Western Star's flagship trucks to operate. The story starts in 1967, when the White Motor Corporation established the Western Star division, initially called White Western Star, with manufacturing in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. The early Western Star trucks used cabs sourced from Autocar, another White subsidiary, giving them a distinctive heavy-duty conventional look from the very beginning. By the time the 4964 model was established as Western Star's core long-haul product through the 1970s and into the 1980s, it had earned a reputation as one of the most customizable and most capable semi-tractors available anywhere in North America. The 4964 designation itself reflects the truck's configuration: a 4x9 frame with a 6x4 drive axle arrangement. Heritage 4864 and 4964 models were produced from 1983 to 1989 with multiple packages named Cheyenne, Apache, Comanche, Chinook, Mohawk, Pawnee, and Navajo, reflecting the truck's identity as a working machine with serious cultural cachet. Engine options across the 4964's production life were consistently at the top of the industry. A 475 horsepower Caterpillar 3406 was a popular choice. Detroit Diesel Series 60 engines producing up to 470 horsepower were also widely specified. For heavy haul applications, Cummins N14 variants pushing well beyond 430 horsepower were available. The 4964 was genuinely a truck where operators chose their own power level, and the choices ran high. The 4964's BBC, bumper to back of cab, length was substantial, a result of the conventional cab design that put significant real estate between the front bumper and the beginning of usable trailer space. This is precisely what made it problematic across continental Europe, where total vehicle length limits had been progressively tightened since the 1960s. European regulations in the 1980s were moving toward caps on combined tractor and trailer length that simply didn't leave enough room for a Western Star 4964's conventional cab plus a full-length trailer to comply. Western Star responded to this by focusing its international expansion on markets where the conventional design was legal. Australia specifically became a major market, where the 4964 became highly successful throughout the 1980s and 1990s. The company established Western Star Trucks Australia WSTA as a distinct entity and specifically engineered variants for Australian regulations. But for most of the rest of the world, the 4964 was effectively unavailable for regular commercial highway operation. Western Star was ultimately acquired by Daimler Trucks North America in 2000 and relocated to Portland, Oregon. But the 4964's era remains one of the most celebrated in the brand's history, a time when Western Star built trucks specifically designed to push the limits of what a conventionally engineered semi could do. Number 5. The International Harvester Paystar 5000. The International Harvester Paystar 5000 was introduced in 1972, and from the moment it arrived, it was clear this was not a truck built to comply with regulations. It was a truck built to overcome terrain, conditions, and loads that would destroy anything more modest. The Paystar shared its cab with the Transstar 4200-4300. Introduced in 1971, the same wide, square, extremely sturdy cab that IH would use across its heavy line through the end of the 1990s. But where the Transstar was a highway tractor, the Paystar was a severe service machine. It came with a heavier-duty chassis, steel fenders instead of fiberglass, and a flat panel hood with a setback front axle specifically designed to handle extreme front axle loads. A set-forward front axle model with a tilting fiberglass hood joined the lineup in 1973. The Paystar was designed for the most demanding commercial applications: heavy-duty dump trucks, concrete mixer trucks, logging, oil field servicing, and extreme construction. It was available in 6x4, 6x6, and 8x4 axle configurations that, particularly in 6x6 form, made it far more than a conventional highway tractor. Engine options evolved throughout its production, with the Cummins DT466 turbocharged 6-cylinder producing 210 horsepower appearing in early Paystar specs, 1975, and larger displacement Cummins and Caterpillar engines producing well over 400 horsepower becoming available in later years. The Paystar 5000 was particularly popular with oil and gas operators throughout North America, who used it in extreme off-road conditions where standard highway trucks would have been destroyed within weeks. But internationally, the Paystar was almost universally restricted. Its gross vehicle weight ratings, even as a standalone tractor before adding a loaded trailer, already pushed against or exceeded the legal limits for highway operation in most nations outside North America. Countries in Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America had national road and bridge weight limits calibrated for lighter commercial vehicles, and a Paystar 5000 in 6x6 configuration operating at even a fraction of its rated capacity was legally problematic on those nations' primary road networks. Even in some European countries during the 1970s, the Paystar's axle configurations and weight distribution profiles were incompatible with national axle weight regulations, which in Europe were often enforced not just as overall limits but as per-axle weight maximums that the Paystar's heavy-duty configuration could breach even when not fully loaded. The Paystar 5000 was eventually replaced by the 5000i series in 1995. but its original production run from 1972 to 1995 represents over 2 decades of building trucks that were essentially too heavy for most of the world to legally use. Number 4. The Diamond Rio Giant. When Diamond T merged with REO Trucks, both divisions of the White Motor Company, in 1967, the result was Diamond Rio. And the flagship product of that merger was the Giant, a name that was not accidental. The Diamond Rio Giant was a heavy-duty, long-haul conventional semi-tractor produced through the early 1970s. It was built for owner-operators and fleet operators who wanted a truck with serious power, serious presence, and serious hauling capability. Engine options were drawn from the top of the industry. Cummins, Caterpillar, and Detroit diesel power plants were all available, with operators configuring rigs that could produce well over 350 horsepower in a period when that figure was still considered extraordinary for a commercial diesel. The Giant carried the DNA of both Diamond T's premium build quality and REO's heavy hauling heritage. It was a truck with a strong following among operators who needed something that could handle loads and distances that lighter spec trucks couldn't sustain. White Motor Corporation, the parent company, filed for bankruptcy in 1980, a collapse that ended Diamond Rio as a going concern and brought the Giant's production to a close. But during its operational years, the Giant faced the same fundamental restrictions that plagued all large American conventional semi-tractors outside North America. In Europe, the long-nosed conventional cab consumed too much of the legally allowable vehicle length budget to permit compliant trailer combinations. European nations throughout the late 1960s and 1970s were enforcing national length limits that simply didn't accommodate the conventional configuration. In developing nations, the Giant's weight capacity and gross combination potential put it beyond what bridge and road infrastructure could legally support. The Diamond Rio Giant is one of the most forgotten great American semi-trucks. It died with its parent company, before the era of truck preservation and restoration culture had really taken hold. But in its day, it was a machine that the world outside North America could only watch, because its roads weren't built for it. Number 3. The International Harvester Transtar 4370. When International Harvester introduced the Transstar 4370 in 1971, the long hood version of the new Transstar 4200-4300 conventional series, it was simultaneously retiring one of the most legendary truck cab designs in American history, the Emeryville cab. The new Transstar introduced an all-new, much larger cab that IH would use on its heavy-duty trucks for the next 28 years, all the way through 1999. The Transstar 4370 was the long hood version of the range, designed specifically to accommodate the largest available diesel engines. At its launch, the standard engine for the 4370 was a 230 horsepower Cummins NH inline 6. But the real news was at the top of the option sheet. International offered the 4370 with a 434 horsepower Detroit diesel 12V71 V12, a 12-cylinder, 2-stroke diesel engine that at launch made the Transstar 4370 one of the most powerful highway tractors available anywhere in the world. A V12 2-stroke diesel producing 434 horsepower in 1971. That is an extraordinary figure for the era. To put it in context, most passenger cars of 1971 were producing between 100 and 200 horsepower. This highway tractor was producing more than double what a performance car of the same year could generate, and it was designed to haul 80,000-pound loads across the continent. By the late 1970s, the 4370's engine options had expanded further. The truck was now available with some of the largest displacement diesels ever fitted to a road vehicle, including the 450 horsepower Cummins KTA inline 6 displacing 1,150 cubic inches, and the Caterpillar 3408 V8 displacing 1,099 cubic inches. The result was a truck that was essentially banned internationally, almost entirely by weight and power. European length regulations excluded the long hood 4370 from compliant operation. European noise and emission standards, which grew more restrictive throughout the 1970s, couldn't be met by engines of this displacement and output specification. And in the developing world, the gross combination weight potential of a fully loaded Transstar 4370 was simply incompatible with national road and bridge networks in virtually every country outside North America. The cab structure introduced with the 4370 in 1971 lasted until 1999, an almost unbelievable 28-year run. When Navistar finally redesigned the cab for the year 2000 models with the I generation, it marked the end of one of the longest-running cab architectures in commercial truck history. The 4370 itself was renamed the International 9370 in 1985, continuing to use the same fundamental cab until the end of production. Number 2. The Autocar AP Series. In 1957, the Autocar company launched the AP Series, a line of trucks explicitly designed for on- and off-road construction applications related to mining, logging, and oil and gas pipeline operations. The AP was not a highway truck in any conventional sense. It was a machine built around the principle that some jobs require a vehicle that makes normal infrastructure irrelevant. The AP series used aluminum extensively in both the frame and cab components, a genuine innovation for the time, aimed at reducing unloaded vehicle weight to maximize payload. The engineering principle was elegant: make the truck itself lighter so it can carry more without breaching weight limits. But the payloads Autocar was targeting with the AP series were extraordinary. The company explicitly marketed these platforms for gross vehicle weights with payloads reaching 40 tons. To put that in context, 40 tons of payload on a truck that was designed to operate off public highways, but which operators inevitably tried to move between job sites using the public road network. Engine options for the AP series drew from the same suppliers that powered all Autocar severe-duty trucks, primarily Cummins, with large displacement diesel configurations that produced significant horsepower outputs for the era. In fully loaded configuration, 40 tons of payload plus the vehicle itself, an AP series combination could reach gross weights that weren't just over the limit in developing nations. They were over the limit on most secondary and even primary roads in the United States, requiring special oversize overweight permits for every public road movement. Internationally, the AP series was essentially self-banning. Any operator who attempted to transit an AP series truck across public roads in countries across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and even most of Europe found that national weight limits, bridge weight ratings, and road surface load ratings made compliant operation impossible. These trucks required specially constructed haul roads within their operating sites, private roads engineered to handle the loads they generated. The Autocar AP series represents perhaps the purest example on this list of a truck that was so powerful and so capable that it had nowhere legal to go outside of purpose-built private infrastructure. It was a machine that had genuinely exceeded the world's ability to accommodate it. Number 1. The International Harvester Transtar II with the Cummins KTA-1150. We've touched on the Transstar II already, but the top spot on this list belongs specifically to the most extreme configuration of that truck, and the story behind it is unlike anything else in commercial truck history. In 1974, when International Harvester introduced the Transtar II COE, the CO4070B series, the company was responding to operator demand for more power than any previous highway tractor had been able to deliver in a production vehicle. The previous Transstar COE had accommodated the 852 cubic inch Detroit diesel 12V71 V12 as its largest engine. That was already extreme. The Transstar II replaced it with the Cummins KTA diesel, an inline 6-cylinder engine displacing 1,150 cubic inches. That is just under 18.9 liters of diesel displacement in an inline 6 configuration, producing 450 horsepower at a time when most highway tractors were producing between 250 and 350 horsepower. The torque output of this engine was proportional to its displacement, enormous, delivered low in the RPM range, and sustained across a wide power band that made the truck extraordinarily capable on long grades and in heavy haul conditions. Also available was the Caterpillar 3408 diesel V8, displacing 1,099 cubic inches, a 18-liter V8 diesel engine in a highway truck. Alongside International's own V800 turbocharged V8, these were engines measured in displacements that most people associate with aircraft piston engines, not road vehicles. The Transstar II didn't just fail to meet European emission standards. The concept of fitting an 18.9-liter diesel engine in a highway tractor was essentially incomprehensible within the European regulatory framework of the 1970s. European nations by the mid-1970s were enforcing noise limits, emissions limits, dimensional limits, and axle weight limits that collectively made the Transstar II with a KTA-1150 engine impossible to certify for road use in any European country. In Japan, where road regulations were among the most strict in the world regarding vehicle dimensions and axle weights, the Transstar II was equally inadmissible. In Australia, where some operators might have otherwise been interested, the combination of dimensional and weight considerations made even the standard Transstar II configurations legally problematic on public roads. The result was a truck whose commercial operation was, in practical terms, confined to North America, specifically to the long-haul heavy freight corridors of the United States and Canada, where the interstate highway system and its accompanying weight and dimension rules were the framework that the Transstar II had been designed around. International discontinued the Transstar II in 1981, replacing it with the CO-9670, which used a much smaller turbocharged Cummins N-series engine. The era of the 1,150 cubic inch road diesel was over, partly for fuel economy reasons following the energy crises of the 1970s, and partly because the world was simply moving toward engine designs that produced more power from less displacement using turbocharging and improved combustion technology. But for a brief, remarkable period between 1974 and 1981, the International Harvester Transtar II with the Cummins KTA-1150 was the most extreme commercial highway tractor in the world, a machine banned from operation in almost every country on Earth except the ones it was specifically designed for. A truck that looked at the concept of too much power and concluded there was no such thing. If you want more deep dives into the real history of the golden age of the 18-wheeler, hit subscribe, leave a comment below telling us which truck from this list surprised you the most, and share this video with anyone who loves trucks, the real ones, with the real history behind them. We'll see you in the next one.